Greetings. Welcome to a new episode of Art Matters, and I'm your host, Wayne Quackenbush. I'll be interviewing two artists today. Let me introduce the first one, Cris McCullough.
McCullough, yes.
McCullough. Thank you for showing up. I've
Thank you for having me.
known you for well over 20 years. First met you through your children who used to visit my place of business in Newport and spent a lot of time there.
Oh yes, you were very much an inspiration, and so was your store.
Thank you. And there's so many things we need to talk about. We need to choose a direction. Now, first of all, since this is an art show, you just told me that that you went to URI a few years ago. And got a degree in art, right?
Yeah, I got my Bachelor of Fine Arts in art history, and theater at URI. And subsequently, I've got a Master's of Arts at Salve Regina in expressive arts therapy. And that basically is using the arts to help people therapeutically for healing.
Now, have you ever practiced that? Have you ever been an art therapist?
Oh, yes,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
I'm currently still a holistic therapist.
Okay.
Yeah. And so again, we use art, but we also integrate various techniques, anything from Reiki to emotional freedom technique to actually shamanism. I'm also a practicing shaman. I've been a shaman for 20 years.
And you've also, and that spiritual path also started at URI too, right?
Yes, as I had been mentioning to you, I am known locally and actually across the United States as a tarot reader. And tarot is a card system that in my book called Holistic Tarot, I bring the threads of spirituality, tarot, spiritual astrology, numerology, and you could say greater thought into the idea of using that tool as also therapeutic or counseling, empowerment more so than just prediction.
Right.
But giving the power back to the person.
Right. And you can see how that would connect in a therapeutic way because you're basically storytelling.
Yeah.
And bringing things out of people that they might not have known were there.
Yes, and that's what art does. I mean, if I personally think, and this is the way I taught my children, I homeschooled my kids until they went to the Met School locally when they were teens. But anyone can do art. They just don't know they can do it. The kind of art they do bubbles up from within.
Right.
And it's a force that not only changes them, but also obviously changes the viewer.
Right.
So there is an intersection, an energy that flows back and forth.
Interaction.
An interaction, right.
And it seems to me that a lot of people have this desire to be an artist, but they don't, I think there's a school of thought that it's kind of knocked out of you when you get into the school system.
That only certain people can be.
It has to be controlled, and you can only do it at a certain time, and you may not have the resources that you need. But I've also have been promoting art as a form of communication and expression, and getting stuff out and connecting people as human beings. For years. For
several years, I worked as the activities director at Tockwatton. I don't know if you know Tockwatton on the waterfront in East Providence, in the memory care unit.
Okay.
And one of the things I started was an art program, because I don't believe that even people with memory issues who are in an elder facility should just sit around, have their nails painted, and watch TV.
Right.
Okay. And this was a very successful program. I thought I would take an old master, something vague like Monet, and I would put it in front of them and say, we're going to paint the essence of Monet. And Monet is just color and shape. And I'd say, here's the palette, here's your thing, set them up, and off they'd go. And then we have a show at the end of our month-long program. And the people were energized. And it doesn't matter it doesn't have to be Monet. It is them.
Right, and it's also, I mean, if you're in a memory care unit, there's a good chance that you're going to be maybe more childlike.
Yes, sometimes.
And children are particularly attracted to color and movement and.
You mentioned the movement part, because a lot of times I would play music also.
Sure.
Nothing with words, just background music, a classic, And again, it's that intersection of hearing and seeing and doing that's so powerful.
And it helps you reintegrate yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that you wanted to talk about today was you have a name for it because it keeps evolving, a new group that you're working with, or a new old group that you're working with.
A new old group, right. So in 1992 to 2002, if people on Aquidneck Island can cast their memories back, there was an event, a yearly event called the Women's Sacred Art Festival and Exhibit. It morphed into both the Women's and the Men's Sacred Art Festival and Exhibit, and then just the Festival and Exhibit of the Arts. And it was hosted throughout Aquidneck Island at various galleries would host us. And we would have events, we would have a ceremony, we would have dancing, song, as well as art exhibits, and not judged, of course, in any medium, to express the creatrix. Originally, it was tied somewhat to the feminist movement because we were talking about women's voice, and then it expanded.
Now, creatrix is a combination of creative and matrix?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So we've made old friends. I mean, Vicki Williams, who is the founder of the Women's Sacred Art, basically she's very well known in the art circles here in Newport. She's a therapist as well as a writer and an artist. And another friend, Karen Talbot, who is a wildcrafter. Her property in Johnston, Rhode Island has been designated as a wild plant sanctuary by Plant Savers United. And she teaches classes in foraging, like, your grocery store's in your backyard.
Right.
And you can eat a lot of things. So we would get together on Fridays because we had time, and over nettle quiche and butterbeer, that's what I call it. And just banging around some ideas, and one day we came back around to Women's Sacred Art and talking about how all those things we discussed about art was so important to now, given climate change and the ecology and the tensions that are around, and how art can be a unifier. So we're banging around, let's do a redo, let's maybe reinvent this for the coming year. So we're still in the planning stages, and we welcome any input people would like to give. So subsequently, one of the ideas we had is we went down to Founder's Brook, which is here in Portsmouth.
Right, of course.
It's where, for those who don't know.
Enough people know that it's here in Portsmouth.
Yes, it's still alive and kicking, okay?
Very pleased that Anne Hutchinson landed there.
Yes, Anne Hutchinson and Mary Dyer were sort of kicked out of the Massachusetts Bay Colony because their ideas were different.
Plus also they were meeting, a woman was hosting religious meetings, and that could not fly.
Yes, their ideas were slightly different. So they brought their families and friends and followers to Portsmouth, Rhode Island, and bought the land from the native people and settled here. And subsequently, some of their settlers broke off and settled Newport, merchant class. So we wanted to honor her. We honored her in the first Sacred Arts series. And we wanted to go back and take a look at it. And Karen foraged a few plants to see what was there wildcrafting, like Japanese knotweed and cleavers and dead nettle. And she is in the process of making something with them. And we gave rise to a thought about making a Founder's Brook apothecary. Karen would do some research on what plants are there, what the colonists used, what the Native Americans used, and maybe do a little recipe book. And then this would help us perhaps promote the idea of
Sure, absolutely.
the Sacred Art Program.
And also, you probably are looking for venues to host shows in the future too, right?
Yes, yes. We haven't done any outreach yet because there have been changes in the gallery structures.
Yeah, the regimes have all changed since
Yeah.
2020, since
So
2002.
there are some new ones, and we'd probably, once we get things more organized with more of a more substance, we'll start reaching out to them.
It's all very exciting, and I
It
hope
is exciting.
it works out. Yes, and you've also, due to circumstances, have had some time to paint.
I got back to painting, yes. I mean, I've been doing, besides working as a therapist, and I was acting for a while with Marley Bridges Theater Company. But way back in the day when wet paint started at the Newport Art Museum, I was involved in that.
Right.
On a yearly basis, really. I think I have T-shirts going all the way back to the beginning.
Sure.
So I recently had some surgery for a heart issue, and I was recovering because I couldn't do much. You can tell I'm not a person who doesn't like to do nothing.
Right.
So I got back to painting. And I have 2 entries for wet paint, and actually I've been doing a painting a day since then.
Oh, fabulous.
So I'm following through, but this was my inspiration, wet
No,
paint.
I've seen these on Facebook. I haven't seen any other ones yet, I don't think.
Oh, there are a couple posted.
Oh, okay. I'll check it out. But you can start showing that and talk about.
Okay, so my first, this was the impetus for everything. So I was bored and said, wet paint's there, and started at it. And this is a sunset at the point. And I found that, as we were saying before, when I was back at URI, I would paint wall-size canvases of clouds and ocean. And I found that that's really what I love. I love that variance. So it's more my impression of an impressionist, if you will.
Sure.
But this is what captures
Now, this is
me.
acrylic, right?
Yeah, this is acrylic on wood.
It looks like you're working wet up in the clouds there.
The reason I love acrylic is because it can go between being that translucent watercolor to the thick impasto.
Absolutely.
And I like to play with both of those.
Yeah. And you can show the other one, so because we're getting close to.
So my second entry for wet paint this year, so if you guys want to bid, you're getting a
Preview.
preview, is a scene from Easton's Beach, my favorite beach, looking towards the cliff walk.
Now, did you do these plein air? No, probably not, because you were probably, did you use a photograph?
This one was plein air.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
fabulous.
that I have a little
So you are
bathhouse.
getting out and about.
Yeah, just locally
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
But that was plein air. This one was from a photograph. The first one was from a photograph.
Very strong.
Yeah. But I love the atmosphere. I'm trying to capture and work on my waves. It brings me a great sense of peace.
Yeah.
And especially since I can't go running around like a nut like I usually do, doing 12 things,
Absolutely.
I can stay put for a day and work on a piece.
Yeah.
And it just takes me away. It makes me very calm. And I think calm is a good healing tool.
And with that, we're running out of time, so I want to thank you again for showing up. I know that we've been talking about this for a while, and I'm glad you could finally make it.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And I hope people will go to Wet Paint and bid because it helps support the Newport Art Museum, which I try to do every year.
Yep.
And also, if you're interested in following through on women's sacred art or have any ideas, my contact information
Will be on the screen.
will be on the screen.
Thank you.
Okay? Thank you.
And we're here with our second artist, John Gieg. John and I met maybe a month ago or so, through circumstances where we were talking about comic books. And John, you're a professional artist. You went to a professional artist's high school. You want to talk a little bit about what your influences were and what drew you into illustration and things like that?
Yeah, sure. It's comic books. It would be Jack Kirby, who I can go on and on about, a hero of mine, and Wally Wood, Robert Crumb, and earlier, just a bunch of, actually somewhat earlier than that, Big Daddy,
Big Daddy Roth.
yeah, with the cars
The
and the
creator of Rat Fink.
Rat Fink.
And then I believe he was a contributor to cartoons.
Yeah, a big influence in a sort of odd way. Just he's sort of. I remember my grandfather taking me to a car show when I was a little guy, and being really bored out of my mind. But walking by this booth selling T-shirts that had his stuff, and it was that's what sort of started my whole interest in art.
Kind of like Rat Fink was a completely despicable looking giant rat with looked like he was wearing a onesie with a big R on it.
Yeah, he was.
And then when I was
anti-Mickey Mouse,
something called Weirdos, which were hot rod riders that had giant hands and big heads and tiny
pinky
little cars.
Extended on
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And they would have these giant, veiny, bugged-out eyes.
Love those guys.
Yep.
That's what was on the T-shirts.
Yes.
And so from then on, I was like drawing monsters all the time. I was a kid that drew monsters.
Right.
And
so did you have a reputation as the kid that drew monsters?
I eventually did. Yeah, it was my thing.
Were you a big fan of Mad Magazine?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
As an adult, more so the early stuff, like with Wally Wood.
Well, Wally Wood, of course.
Mort
Drucker did those wonderful
the caricatures.
Caricatures for movies and TV shows, and I vividly remember trying to copy him because, I mean, how could you make somebody look like that, exaggerated, but still have the resemblance with just a few little lines? It was amazing.
Yeah, it is incredible. Some of the talent on that magazine is ridiculous.
So you've obviously gone on and taken your influences and moved into making your own work.
Yeah.
Do you want to start with showing us what you're up to?
Yeah, this is a good overview. This is my book. A is for Absalom, and it's
now, is it an alphabet book?
It's an alphabet book. I don't know if you know Edward Gorey.
Oh yeah, of course.
It's kind of the same idea.
The Ghastly Crumb Tinies.
Yeah.
Yep.
Where basically, I was trying for years. I was working briefly as a children's book illustrator, and it was driving me crazy. And for one thing, they always have to be smiling. All the characters had to be smiling.
Yeah, not in Edward Gorey stuff.
Not yeah, but he's different.
Oh, of course.
But yeah, and
you could show us some of the inside of that.
Well, and the writing was so awful.
Yes.
And I finally said, well, I could do better than that. And I tried for a long time and wasn't really able to. But what I finally did is have all these sketchbooks full of these monsters and heroes and gods.
Well, it kind of reminds me of two things. It reminds me of the old creature manuals for Dungeons and Dragons, and also they used to make books of bestiaries, which is basically a modern day bestiary.
It absolutely is.
You got a real medieval feel going on there.
Yeah, I wanted. I ended up, figuring that would getting a typeface that had frames and doodads that would tie it all in together.
So it's kind of like an illuminated manuscript
Absolutely.
from the Middle Ages.
That's
and how they would start the top of a paragraph or the top of a page with a large letter that was completely decorated and literally illuminated.
Yep. And there's that would be another one of my influences beyond comic books. Would be
What,
that.
like Hieronymus Bosch?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, and then as an adult, sort of in a used bookstore, discovering one of these codexes of this Mayan people.
Oh,
And,
right. Yeah, I could see some of the Mesoamerican
and
influence
just
there.
putting that into it as well, and also Picasso and
Yeah, I mean,
Van Gogh.
your influences are ever expanding when you have access to all this stuff.
Yeah.
So, and then what's this one?
This is the coloring book of many dragons.
Oh, yes.
And that's line art.
Now you can
And-
show them the cover.
Oh, cover.
Hold it up for a second there so she can get a focus on it.
Tilt
Yeah.
it the right way.
Yep, that looks good. This is all black and white, obviously.
It is, and I learned a lot about. See, I don't color. The thing about adults doing this as a hobby, I didn't really know about until I started working on the book, and just discovering what it is that they like. Beyond good line art.
No, I think that it was like 10 years ago, and all of a sudden there were coloring books for adults, and I
All
think it
over the
really
place.
took off during the pandemic.
It did, yeah.
Yeah, that looks very gargoyle-like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is heading sort of
Yeah.
northern England kind. Yeah, they're all different cultures too,
Sure.
which is the interesting thing about dragons.
Now, when you color your own work, are you using watercolor mostly?
Mostly, yeah. For a while there, before I sort of fell out of the cloud, the creative cloud, which just annoys the hell out of me. Oh, that's a good one.
Wait, how do you fall out of the creative cloud?
That's a long story. But
Okay. You don't want
I
to
just
tell
want
it.
to own Photoshop. I just want to have
Oh,
it.
I
And,
see.
Yeah, and it bothers me that you don't.
No.
I guess I'm very old school in some ways, that being one of them. And but I would basically import it into Photoshop
Sure.
and color there.
I got you.
Maybe with line art, I would bring it in.
No, we want to keep
Oh.
moving because we have a lot to. You still have other stuff.
Oh, okay.
That's one of your original paintings, right?
This is a print.
Oh, it's a print.
Yeah, yeah.
Based on your painting.
Yeah, and this is a blind dragon. This is like, I have developed a whole other thing. I have a book I'll be coming out with at some point of what I think of as pre-Olmec.
Okay.
And it gives me a lot of freedom to work with certain,
I'm really digging that dog I
Forms.
see. Like he looks like an Olmec dog.
this is Tinglet. This is more of Northwestern Native American carving
Oh,
of
okay.
a pug, which I don't think exists. I don't think there was ever.
Oh, I don't think pugs were
I don't think it,
part of that culture, but that's pretty cool.
yeah. That's life is too short for egrets, and that's pretty much explains
Yeah, well,
itself. Sure.
it's your sense of humor,
Sense of humor comes into play. The Stooges.
and when he says the Stooges, he means the Three Stooges, as represented as Japanese woodcut characters. Now we have to be that fast.
Oh,
Okay,
sorry.
there's another pug.
And this is Kirby in Jack Kirby's.
Oh yeah,
With
because
the Kirby crackle.
Jack Kirby, the comic book artist, co-creator of the Fantastic Four and the Incredible Hulk and all these other characters. Wait, put it back up.
Really? Okay.
Because
Yeah.
he just made all of this machinery that he built out of his brain, and it was like pieces of bicycles and refrigerator motors and car parts, and
Kirby machine.
this is an homage to that. So, I mean, see, I know where you're coming from.
Comic books, Marvel in particular.
Yep.
And then I had a series of birds on bikes.
Oh, wow.
And
That was where the egret came from.
yeah.
Yep.
This is O is for Ozymandias. And
Okay, to me that looks like one of the weirdos we were just talking about.
it's from the Absoloth book, the alphabet book.
Oh, okay.
And it's kind of funny because I was reading it out loud at this thing, and I'd forgotten how dark it had gotten.
Oh, your alphabet book?
Yeah, at certain parts it was like really bad time.
Well, I mean, this has got some kind of skeleton being digested, or in a going fishing in some what looks like an internal organ, maybe.
Yeah.
What? Wait, no, hold it up so you can tell. So you can talk about it.
U is for Ungahila, and that's
Okay.
some of them are from actual legends, and that's from I think Iroquois. That's a character that arose from the Atlantic and had impenetrable scales and giant claws like spears.
And how does that work in with the Jonah-looking skeleton?
I just thought it looked cool.
Oh yeah, very cool. And then the scales and.
I don't know if it works in.
And it's your again the weirdos and Big Daddy Roth and maybe a little bit of Robert Crumb and Edward Gorey. Now Gasly Crumb Tinies was an alphabet book that was much darker than what you're talking about.
Yeah, he sometimes just can't believe his courage.
Well, I think he got to the point where he was able to write his own ticket. I mean, isn't there a museum in Massachusetts?
His house.
Have you been there?
Yeah, love it. It's
isn't it eccentric?
Oh, sure.
Isn't there some eccentric stuff going on? Okay, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, right?
yeah.
Okay.
And in researching, I wanted to do her as a samurai of the last at the gates defending the Constitution.
Right, and the Constitution in the background.
And then found out that there actually were female samurai.
That's correct.
And they used, what is it called? Nagata?
I don't know.
It's basically a sword on a pole.
Right, like a pike.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's just pure Photoshop. And
Yes.
there's, I think it's a British queen, probably Victoria.
I see a little bit of Harryhausen there.
Little, yeah.
Remember the animator? Remember?
Absolutely, yeah.
Jason and the Argonauts.
Mm-hmm. Talos.
Talos.
And this is the sort of thing I'm working on now. It's these exploded views, and it's. I worked for a while at a graphic design company that did work for medical instruments, and I always. It's sort of. You see bits of that in there with the exploded view, which is.
You had to show the parts and how they fit together.
Yeah, graphically, and then taking that and mixing it in with some medieval woodcuts, some religious icons.
Well, that's very trippy.
And yeah, it gets a little trippy. And I've got a few of those that I've got now.
Oh, we've reached the end of our journey here.
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciate you coming down. I know we've been talking about this for a while. So
That was fun.
thank you for coming.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
All right.
Okey-doke.
And that wraps it up. Another episode of Art Matters. Join us next time, and thanks for watching.